Hey, how's it going? Today I'm talking about what should I do if I miss a long run.
This is Running to the Castle, a podcast for injury-prone RunDisney runners on a journey to running magical miles. Join me, Dr. Allie, as I share the secrets I've gathered as a runner, doctor of physical therapy, and coach. You'll learn the exact ways I get my clients to the castle strong without feeling broken or held together with KT tape as they cross the finish line.
So we are in dopey training season at the time of recording this. And of course, we are in half marathon season, goofy season, marathon season, and dopey season. But I find that this question comes up more often with dopey training. And I'm not sure why. I'm not sure if it's just because that is who is in my audience, more people doing dopey training, or why. Maybe somebody knows the answer to that. You can always DM me, runDisneyDPT on Instagram. But what should you do if you miss a long run? I recently got a question that said, I missed the first long run of training. Do I need to make it up? That is a question I got recently. I get this question often when it comes to vacations, holidays, illness, knee pain. I'd say it's most often because of knee pain. Somebody misses the long run because they've taken 2 weeks off because their doctor told them to do that, or somebody else in their life told them to do that. And if you've been in my world for any length of time, you know I don't recommend taking a full 2 weeks off, but that's a conversation from another podcast episode. I will link that in the show notes. So what happens if you miss a long run? Should you make it up? So let's talk about training first. If you're following a strategic training plan, like you should be, because we don't just go out and willy-nilly run what we want, because that's a recipe for disaster. If you're following a strategic training plan, you should have deload weeks worked in. So that's one thing to look for in your training plan when deciding what you should do if you miss a long run. You also want to look at how the week is structured, how your training is structured, and you also want to think about how much have I been running up to this point. So I'm actually going to talk about the last one first. How much have you been running up until this point? Because it goes with the most recent question I got about I missed the first long run. This person was starting a new training plan for a race that's coming up, and they were wondering what they should do. Should they make up the long run that they missed? So the first long run is, of course, important because you're starting off training for your race. You want to start off on the right foot. You don't want to miss things. So, of course, if you can do it, you want to keep everything on track. But sometimes life happens. So that's where we're at. Life happened. What do we do? So the first question is, what have you been running up until this point? So many of my training plans that I write out start around 3 miles. That's if you're training for a half marathon, full marathon, a 2-course challenge, goofy, dopey, the 3 challenge for Springtime Surprise, 3-course challenge for Springtime Surprise. Often they start at 3 miles. That doesn't mean that you should start that training plan at 3 miles if you've been running nothing. So my recommendation is for somebody to start at a 0 to 5K training plan before starting these training plans that I've written. And so if you do a 0 to 5K training plan, then you've already built up to a 5K distance. And this this 2-course challenge that this person is talking about, the first long run is 3.1 miles. So for this particular person, if they've been building up to the 5K distance, then it is likely that they could skip this 5K, this 3.1 long run, and just go to the next week. Because if they've been doing 0 to 5K up until this point, they did 0 to 5K, it was a 14-week training plan, and now they are going into this 2-course challenge training plan as a continuation. Well, they've already been able to recently, in the past 1 to 2 weeks, run 3.1 miles, the 5K distance. So it would be safe to go to the next long training run, which is 10% more than the 3.1 miles. If this person was not regularly running 3.1 miles or building up to it recently, I would say no, do not skip that long run. So if they've only been running 1 or 2 miles for the past, let's say, 6 weeks, they trained for something else, they trained for a half marathon, then they took a bunch of time off, and they just started getting back into it. So they've been running like a mile a couple times a week, then 2 miles, and now they're getting into this 2-course challenge training plan. Well, I would recommend building up to 3.1 miles before starting this training plan. But if they're a seasoned runner, maybe they're not doing that. But I would not skip that 3.1 miles. I would start basically a week behind, start that first week, that 3.1 miles on the next long run day, and then continue on with the training plan as scheduled. It will put them a week behind, so they will have to accommodate for that down the line. And I'll talk about how to do that in a minute. But basically, if you're at the very beginning of a training plan, if you have already gotten up to or beyond that distance, and you're essentially just starting at this distance because that's what the training plan says, which I do recommend, even if you are beyond the 3.1 miles. Let's say you've been running 5 miles as your long run regularly, and now you're doing Disney Dumbo Double Dare, and that's the 2-course challenge. Well, that starts at 3.1 miles. On my training plans, I don't recommend skipping to get up to that 5 miles or waiting until that 5 miles. Start at that 3.1, but since your long run has been 5 miles and you missed the first long run, go ahead and just start next week with the next training run. That should be fine as long as you're not having any regular aches and pains. If you haven't run up to that 3.1 miles yet, don't make it up and don't skip it. Okay? So, moving on a little bit, what if you haven't been running that 3.1 miles lately and you don't want to skip it, you just want to make it up? Can you just make it up another day this week? Let's say the long run is supposed to be Sunday. You missed it for whatever reason. Can you do it Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, sometime during the week? Yes and no. I recommend having at least 5 days, even better if it's 6 or 7 days, well, I guess 6 days, between long runs. So pick a day of the week that you're going to do your regular long run and keep that day. You can have wiggle room within a day to give yourself adequate rest in between long runs to recover. So if your normal run day is Sunday, you missed it for whatever reason, could you do it Monday instead? Yes, go ahead and do it Monday. But if you can't get to it until Friday, well, doing it on Friday and then doing the next long run on Sunday, that's not enough recovery time for your muscles, for your joints. Don't do it. So you don't want to move it around too much during the week. Well, what about just adding on the extra miles to another run? I never recommend that. That is almost always a recipe for disaster, because if you tack it on to another run and you're not an experienced runner and used to doing that, especially if you've battled injuries in the past, it it doesn't go well. You overdo it, you overtrain, and you get hurt. So I never recommend tacking it on to another run. If my clients say, "Okay, well, I missed my long run this weekend, I'll just make it up later in the week." Nope, we missed it. Have our feelings about missing it. If we feel upset about missing it, that's fine. Have the feelings, but don't be too hard on yourself and don't force yourself to make it up, because you will get hurt. And if you miss that long run and you just delay until the next week, look at your training plan and modify things. So if it's already happened in the past that you missed it, look down the line. If you're following my training plans, you see that deload weeks are worked in there. Now, I like deload weeks because it gives your body a week to adjust. It gives your body a week to catch up, to acclimate to the increased mileage that you've been doing. If you feel fine and you missed a week, well, you can skip that deload week and go to the next training run. I don't recommend doing that all the time. You can't just cut out deload weeks to make up for missing lots and lots of training. No, this is an occasional thing. So if it's already happened, you missed the very first week, well, push it to the next week. And then when you get to that 5th or 6th week, depending on what training plan you're following, that deload week, well, we can just, if you're feeling fine, you can likely just cut that out and just go to continuing to move forward with it. Now, looking forward, I talked about what if, this often comes up when somebody has a vacation. Well, look ahead and see when your vacation is so that you don't miss a long run. Switch things around. Make your deload week be during vacation week so that if you are running, well, you're not missing out on building that endurance. You make it a deload week. So you either run whatever's during the deload week or go and have fun with your family on vacation, and maybe you don't run at all that week. Not running at all for a whole week once in a while is not going to kill your training. So you'll be fine if you decide that you want to run whatever the deload week says or just hang out with your family. And you can plan that out ahead of time. Another reason I like the deload weeks, besides it helps decrease your risk of injury, it also is worked in there for when you get sick, because as you're training, it always happens, right? You catch a cold, you catch the flu, you catch whatever else, you don't feel good, and it helps you manage your training so that you don't need to worry that you missed some time. What I'm saying is never add those miles on to another long run. Keep your long run close to or always on the same training day of the week. So if you like Sunday, do it Sunday. You do have some wiggle room to make it Saturday or Monday, but really going beyond that is just doesn't give your body enough rest in between long runs. If you have been training and have gone beyond that run distance, let's say it's that first run again, if you've already been training beyond that, yes, you can likely skip that long run and just start at the next week. If you haven't been training that way, don't skip it. Start at that long run distance the following week and manipulate the training plan to adjust on that deload week. And if you know you're going on vacation or you know it's going to be a super busy week for whatever reason for your family, flip-flop that busy week with a deload week if it doesn't already fall on a deload week. Okay, let me know what other questions you have about training as you're going through your Run Disney season. go ahead and DM me runDisney DPT on Instagram.
As always, thanks so much for listening. That's all for now. Talk to you soon.